Hello, guys. Welcome back to Bobcat Corner. This is episode number 17 of this series of Bobcat Corner. I am Stephen Vitt, bringing you more news related to the Ohio Bobcats. And basically, what this episode is going to be about is a rundown, a preview, and a discussion of the upcoming season of 2024 for the Ohio Bobcats football team. Now, like I said before, we will resume the Know the Bobcats series of just introducing you guys to the roster of football players we have. But I think it's important for me to have a rundown of this schedule that we're going to be having here for the Ohio Bobcats to give you guys more insight as to what could be happening for the Bobcats this year. And I just want to give you guys my opinion about how this season might go down. And this is just as educated of an opinion as I can give you guys. Obviously, none of us know what's really going to happen here. So I've taken down some notes lately about what could happen for the season. And I do come across interesting stats, interesting notes that I should be focused on, that you guys should be focused on. And we're just going to get started here with this schedule. And on the surface, when I look at the schedule here, it doesn't look all that hard when you really break it down. But there are some games that I see that could possibly be trap games for the Bobcats, that could be games that the Bobcats can't overlook. So let's just run down this list, this schedule that the Bobcats have, starting with Saturday, August 31st, 3:30 p.m. at Syracuse. That's the opening game. And right off the bat, it's a very interesting game to start with for the Bobcats. It is definitely a good first test for the Bobcats. Syracuse, well, let's just say that Syracuse, they're obviously not like an annual contender for the ACC championship. Okay, Syracuse has not been like a powerhouse to the ACC for the last few years. They've had much better days way back in the past, like 90s and 2000s. A couple seasons ago, Syracuse did get off to a good start, but then they just you know veered off, tailed off for some reason. But yeah, Syracuse is bringing in some talent, such as transfer from Ohio State, the quarterback Kyle McCord. You may have heard of him. People in Ohio definitely have heard of that guy. But Kyle McCord, he's having a fresh new start at Syracuse. It's going to be his debut at Syracuse. So it's going to be interesting in that aspect alone, what's going to happen in that game. As you'll see here on the screen, I do have this marked down as an L, as a loss for the Bobcats. But I do want to note that this is more of a coin flip, more of a game that's up in the air than what people think. Because sometimes, and I've seen this many times, where G5 schools, they go into a power conference school's stadium, and somehow, some way, they get the win. They steal a game, so to speak. And this could be one of those kinds of games where, the Ohio Bobcats on paper, yeah, they're not as talented as Syracuse. I mean, obviously, MAC school versus ACC school, that's obvious. But games are not played on paper. That I know. So I do give Ohio a puncher's chance at this game, because you never know. Syracuse might be napping at their home opener. Syracuse may not be all that focused. It happens sometimes. And if that does happen here, then, all bets are off at that point. So we'll see what happens there. And the next week, September 7th, Uh, the Ohio Bobcats, they're coming back home to Athens. They're going to be hosting the South Alabama Jaguars. Now, South Alabama, I've heard good things about them, about their football program last few years. Very talented team, no doubt about it. Very talented team, South Alabama. Uh, there again, puncher's chance. I give South Alabama a puncher's chance to make some noise in this game. But ultimately, I do believe the Ohio Bobcats are more talented, and I do believe they're going to be focused in their home opener on week 2, September 7th. And it's at Athens, Ohio. So Frank Solich Field. So I'd have to think that the Bobcats are going to get this game. Okay, so the next game would be at home, still at home, Frank Solich Field, uh, hosting the Morgan State Bears. That's an FCS team. So that's definitely going to be an easy win for the Bobcats. No disrespect to Morgan State, of course, but it is what it is. FCS team, you should be able to beat an FCS team, and I believe the Bobcats will. So easy win there. So technically, they're 2-1. But then you have to go to Lexington, Kentucky, to play the Kentucky Wildcats, and this is one of the few games on this schedule where I can clearly tell you guys that, yeah, I'm not confident about this game at all. I believe, no doubt about it, this is an automatic loss for the Ohio Bobcats. I'm hoping I'm wrong, of course, but I really believe that this is going to be an L for the Bobcats. They're going to go to Lexington to face an SEC team. Obviously, not the highest tier of an SEC team, but an SEC team nonetheless. So, yeah, I'm probably going to lose at Kentucky. Of course, you never know. Any given Saturday, any given college football day, but yeah, I'm pretty sure this is going to be a loss. So 2-2 technically for the Bobcats, but you come back home to Frank Solich Field at Athens. Come back home, going to be hosting the Akron Zips week week 5, September 28th. This should be an easy win. No disrespect to the Akron Zips, but they're still rebuilding. They've been rebuilding for the last few years, and hasn't come together yet for that team. Um, and the Ohio Bobcats, they're obviously further along in development as a football team. They should be able to beat Akron. So that's 3-2. Next up, October 12th, week 6, you're going to Mount Pleasant, Michigan, to be the visiting team facing the Central Michigan Chippewas. Now, some people have this down as a loss for the Ohio Bobcats, and I can understand why. Because Central Michigan, they are a talented team. They have some good things going for them. I mean, I've checked out the roster. They have good talented players, but I'm also feeling like this is going to be a game where the Bobcats can win. It could be a back and forth kind of game here, but I do believe ultimately the Bobcats can get this game either by a field goal or by a touchdown or by 10 points. Either way, I do believe the Bobcats can beat Central Michigan. So I do have this down as a win. So the first half of the season, the Bobcats are 4-2, according to how I'm seeing it. And now, get the right thing here. I'm just checking out the schedule here, what I've marked down. And the back half of the season for the Ohio Bobcats, it's once again interesting because you're entering MAC play, you're entering conference play at this point, and it's pretty much more of the same, just as the first half of the season, where I do see a loss or two here, but ultimately I do think that the Ohio Bobcats can take care of business. Now, these two games I want to mention, because I have to mention it, uh, this week 7 game at Miami, Ohio, and way back down the road here, 10, this week 11 game at Toledo, November 20th, Wednesday. Uh, both those games I have down as L's. They're losses. I'm sorry, but I'm hoping I'm wrong, of course, with these games. But I do believe when it comes to rankings in the MAC, I do believe that the Ohio Bobcats have some catching up to do compared to Miami of Ohio and Toledo. That's just how it is. I do believe Miami of Ohio and Toledo are 1 and 1A, basically leading the way in the MAC as it is right now. I mean, we'll see what happens in the season, but right now I have to believe Miami of Ohio and Toledo, they're leading the way in the MAC, and for good reason. They have more talent on their team comparatively. And the Bobcats, again, they do have talent on the roster, but I can just tell that we still need time to develop our players. We still need time to just really make certain jumps in development and progression of how we play. Miami of Ohio and Toledo, they're way ahead of us in comparison. And that's just my opinion. I could be wrong about that, but that's just my opinion. So we lose at Miami and we lose at Toledo. But every other game on the schedule in the back half, I see these games as wins. And in some cases, pretty easy wins. Like October 26th, come back home, Frank Solich Field at Athens. We host the Buffalo Bulls. We should be able to beat Buffalo. November 6th, we do go on the road at Kent State, at Kent, Ohio, but we should be able to beat the Golden Flashes easily. Kent State, they're just rebuilding. That's all there is to it with that. Um, November 13th, Wednesday, come back home, Athens. We face the Eastern Michigan Eagles. I mean, really, we should be able to beat Eastern Michigan. That should be more of a tougher game in comparison to the other games we have here, but Eastern Michigan, we should be able to handle them. Really, it's at home this game, and yeah. And finally, our uh, our schedule. The ending game here is November 29th, Friday at noon, uh, versus Ball State. We're at home hosting Ball State. Uh, I don't expect anything out of the ordinary to happen here. We should be able to take care of business, being the Ball State Cardinals. And yeah, that's how we finish the season. So when you add it all up, I just believe that if we can aim for and get an 8-4 season finish, I do believe that we'll be on the right track. That we'll still be on the right track to really develop our roster and to really go places in the future. As far as contending for a MAC conference championship goes, I'm not sure about that. Uh, I'd like to see the Bobcats get there, of course. But like I said, Miami of Ohio and Toledo, they're 1 and 1A right now. So until something changes along those lines, that's just the opinion right now. So yeah, I'm going to go in more depth about this at a later time about why I think this when it comes to the schedule for the Bobcats.